You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 63. Today I'll be talking to Cryptik. Alright, so my name is Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community. Featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairs.podcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram and Facebook at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is street artist Cryptik. Cryptik's art is an absolute vibe, and really creates this visceral, calming and almost meditative experience for the viewers of his work. And on the show, we talk about this desire that he has to create a sort of transfer of peaceful energy through himself and his work. We also talk about how he first got started making art that was more fulfilling to him, the inspiration for his incredible letter forms, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Cryptik. Cryptik, welcome to the show, man. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So let's dive a little bit into your background. And I've gotten conflicting reports about where you were actually born. I think probably the most credible of those had you in South Korea, but then very quickly moving to Southern California. So is that the one that was correct?
Yeah, that's right on. I was born in South Korea, but I came to the States when I was 3 years old.
So you don't really have any memories of
No, not. I mean, the only memory I have is throwing up on the bus ride to the airport because I get really bad motion sickness. So I do remember that, and the smell of exhaust and all that's quite vivid. But aside from that, no, not too much.
What brought your family to the U.S.?
The typical American dream. My big uncle actually came out here first. He set up a company. He needed some help, so he invited my parents to come out and work for the company. And till this day, that's what they've been doing. Obviously, there were some things in between. They left to do, some other things when times got tough. But yeah, they've been with the company for many years now. But it was really for opportunity, for us too, to kind of show us a better life.
Did you ever have any pressure to go into the family business?
Oh, not at all. There's no way, man. It's pretty hardcore engineering type stuff, circuit boards and all sorts of stuff that's way beyond my level. Yeah, I'm kind of a black sheep, though. Always have, kind of been on the more creative side, I guess. So, yeah.
And I guess how was that transition? I guess if you didn't really have any memories of growing up or, any of the period that you spent in South Korea, I guess all of what you remember is in the U.S., but was there a transition period where you had to kind of adjust to the culture?
I'm sure there was, but I think being so young, it almost seems like I was born here, because, we spoke, Korean at the house, but outside, it's English, so it really felt American, you know what I mean? Since day one, I guess. So, I mean, I don't really remember, that transition period. I'm sure there was one.
What part of Southern California did you come up at? Was it LA or was it outside?
It was actually in Buena Park. That's where my uncle, he lived in Buena Park. So we stayed with him for, I don't even know how many months or years. But after that, we moved to Santa Ana, which is like Orange County. So we grew up, like my younger years, up until like the 5th grade. I was in Santa Ana growing up and, going to school in Santa Ana. And then about the 5th grade, we moved up to Corona, which is up in Riverside. So kind of bounced around a bit, but yeah, most of my childhood was, I'd say in Santa Ana. That's where most of my childhood memories are. And Corona was, a big part, like going into junior high and all that was, very memorable as well.
So you mentioned being the black sheep and on the one that was in kind of the more artistic side. So does that mean that there was not other people in your family that were interested in the arts? Was it you were kind of breaking new ground there?
I don't know if it was necessarily that they weren't creative. I think they're all creative in different ways. One of my cousins, he's a chef. Another cousin, he's very creative, just a jack of all trades, does it all. So, they are, there is that creative side. But I think culturally, like, art was never really looked at as like a career per se. It was just something, we did for fun. So growing up, it was just a hobby. But, I think my parents, like, I was very lucky because they never like pushed academics on me so much to the point where like, I see other kids and how kids grow up these days. And it's really tough. But maybe they, either didn't have the time or really didn't see that in me. Right. I was always skateboarding and, doing rascally things, getting into trouble. So, I think they just let me be.
Did they know that you, because it's one thing when parents are supportive of somebody's interest in the arts because they think it's just a hobby and they want to be supportive of their kids' hobbies. Do you think they would have been as supportive if they knew you were going to go into it as a career?
To be honest, I don't even know if they thought that was even possible. Because we, growing up, we didn't know anybody that was an artist, like making a living, at least like, a visual artist or a painter, that type. Like, it was really foreign, but I think like it really wasn't until after college or I guess like a year into college where I was just completely like kind of lost, man. Like I had no idea like what I wanted to do. And a good friend of mine, one of my best friends, was actually going to Art Center in Pasadena at the time. And, obviously I was always interested in art, and like that really sounded, I think that was the first time where it clicked in my mind, like maybe it is possible, like, because even for me, like it's not like I realized it was even, a possibility. Yeah. So I talked to my parents and said, yeah, this is what I want to do. And they were fully supportive. And since that time, they're really like my biggest fans. So I'm very, very lucky in that regard. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. You mentioned skateboarding a lot and getting into trouble doing rascally things. Does that mean you were doing street art graffiti at that point, or did that come later?
No. That's definitely much later. I think growing up, it was really just, we were latchkey kids. We were kind of that generation, right? Like, parents, right? Like we had the key to the house. We walked to school back and forth. Like parents didn't come home till the sun was down. Oh, yeah. So during during that time, we had a lot of freedom. So we would take our skateboards and just cruise like miles, just looking for interesting spots. It wasn't like, it's not like today, where you can just go to the skate park and put your helmet on and cruise, right? Like, no, I mean, it was a bit rougher. It was like, back then skateboarding, was kind of considered a crime. Like they wouldn't let you skateboard anywhere. So you really had to kind of go out of your way and look for these cool spots. And, we would just, build ramps and go nuts, and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome. And so you ended up going into Art Center. And I guess, what was your focus at Art Center? I know you were doing graphic design for a while after school. Were you doing graphic design in school?
Yeah, I think before even considering going to Art Center, I just assumed like computers were the future. I knew nothing about computers, completely illiterate in any software, right? Like I wasn't even using email at that time, but I saw that my sister's older brother was a graphic designer and he seemed to be making a decent living. So I'm like, maybe I should be a graphic designer. Maybe I need to do something computer related, even though that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. I wanted to draw. I wanted to illustrate. But I followed that just thinking more, what would be, something that I could do as a career afterward. So I went into graphic design. And then halfway into that, they opened up this program for motion graphics.
Nice.
So it was, a lot of like 3D and animation, and it didn't really like interest me much, but all the homies, like all of my friends that like I looked up to and, that I respected were like, yo, this is the direction I'm going. And I'm like, I'm coming with you.
Right.
Cause I really didn't know. Right. Like I was like, I didn't want to be left behind. So I followed that direction, and that was what I did after Art Center for many years.
And was that like Flash? Was that Flash animation? Because I know that time-wise, that was around the time Flash was really becoming big.
During that time, it was really just like After Effects, Maya, Cinema 4D, those kinds of things. But nothing really crazy. I was kind of more involved in, the design. I would be designing storyboards for music videos, commercials, and, things like that. So, I mean, it was still like creative enough for me where I felt like, oh, this is, I could do this for a little bit. But, it wasn't like,
wasn't where your heart was.
Yeah. It wasn't something that fed my soul, right? Mm-hmm. Like, any free time I had at work, after work, it was dedicated to working on my own craft or whatever. So
were these freelance projects, these commercial projects that you were doing, or were you on staff somewhere?
No, I was actually freelance the entire time, like probably for 10 years.
Okay.
But I was really permalance, at a few studios. I didn't really bounce around much. So my last stint, I was there for many years as a permalancer because I think it was just a thing back then. Like none of us really wanted to be on the payroll. Like as a full time, we kind of like the freedom as a freelance artist.
Is that because you ultimately eventually wanted to get away from that and you just didn't want to be, locked in?
I don't know. I had no idea. I mean, during that time, right? Like in the heat of it, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe this is it, right? Maybe I can open up a motion studio and, start doing some really creative projects and stuff like that. But I think that idea, came and went fairly quickly because, like really my heart was really still into the arts. And at that time, like, street art and just graffiti and everything was just so much more exciting to me than anything I was doing at work. So that's kind of where most of my focus went whenever, I had the chance.
Yeah. So how did you balance that? If you were working during the day doing all of these commercial projects, when did you make time for, doing your personal work and building up your own craft?
It was really, it was really tough because I drove like an hour and a half to and from work every day. So by the time I got home, it would be, past 7, 8 p.m., just enough time to maybe go grab a bite with my wife, come back maybe like 10, 11. I would start working.
Oh, wow.
Until like 2, 3, sometimes in the morning, just like a zombie. And I would repeat that, every day. But it was cool because I was so excited to do it, right? Like I couldn't wait to get home to work on it. And then on the weekends, I would go out and do whatever, put up art or whatever it is.
So how did you get into, if street art wasn't something that you really discovered when you were growing up, how did you ultimately discover it and fall in love with it?
Yeah, I was always fascinated with graffiti. So from a young age, it was a lot of graffiti, like cholo graffiti, tagging, and gang graffiti type stuff. So it wasn't really like colorful, pieces or anything like that. But that I guess it always left an imprint in me. And it was something I was always drawn to. So, like in the 5th grade, my buddy Albert was, the first person who introduced me to wild style. And, he was drawing these crazy pieces and, with fluorescent markers and fills. I was like, wow, what is that? It blew my mind. So yeah, it was just, those early inspirations had always kind of stuck with me and kind of resurfaced when I was in art school. All those kind of ideas, I guess, just like, oh yeah, like that's what really moved me. That's what really inspired me, along with skateboarding and stuff like that, skateboarding graphics. And I guess later, it wasn't until I started seeing, like real, kind of more like niche, like street art, it was like, it wasn't graffiti. This was something different. These were paste ups. These were like tiles. These were like installations. This was like yarn and all sorts of like clever ideas and things. And that was like, it was super interesting to me, because I knew that I didn't have like the capabilities, to do the kind of stuff that, other, people were doing in terms of spray can art. Like, obviously I tried. I was like, oh yeah, I want to be a graffiti artist, like that was like, oh, like a dream, right? Like I really want to like, paint pieces and do that. But I really had to be honest with myself. Like that wasn't my gift, man. I tried, and it's like just seeing like the type of like talent that was out there. It's like, there's no way, right? Like I'm such a scrub. Like I'm just going to stick to what I know how to do. And that was, that was really calligraphy. Like I've always just been, more comfortable with, I guess like lettering and design. So that's kind of like what I went back to and kind of stuck to. Obviously in the earlier years, it was really more about like iconic, like graphic illustrations. I thought that that's what I wanted to do. I thought that was like, maybe the direction I wanted to go. And at the time it was cool. It was, it was a good way, I guess, for me to kind of share the things that I was learning. But yeah, it, obviously I just slowly evolved over time. But, yeah, no, to get back to your point though, like, yeah, it was really just seeing all the amazing, stuff that was going up. And I just got super inspired.
So during that time where you were working the commercial work and doing all of this on the side, was most of your energy going into work that you were putting up on the streets, or were you also doing, studio, more studio style work, like smaller paintings and stuff like that? Or was it some combination of those things?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely, paintings, I guess like prints. Like back then it was, I was doing a lot of silkscreen printing. So in my garage, I would just print hundreds and hundreds of, wheat paste.
Nice.
And t-shirts and all sorts of stuff, stickers. And it was cool because I could just like give it all away. Like, I had a job. So that was a way of, supporting my hobby, which was the art. So yeah, it was just all for fun. I was just, making all this stuff, and yeah, had a lot of freedom, to kind of just experiment and explore different mediums.
So as you were discovering like your style and actually, getting the confidence to go out and put some of it in the streets, was there a period of it where it was, unsanctioned, and then you gained notoriety and it became legitimate, or were you always doing, commissioned work or above the board work, so to speak?
Oh yeah, back then when it was like wheat paste and stuff like that, it was there was no permission. It was just kind of going up. Maybe once in a while, like I would hear from someone, "Hey, I have a coffee shop. I have these roll up gates. If you want to come hit it, feel free." And so I'd be like, "Yeah, let's go." So we would get lucky, at times, but for the most part, it was just going out looking for interesting spots. And back in those days, especially, there was so much art everywhere, even in downtown, like the arts district, you wouldn't be able to recognize it today. It's completely different. So it was really thriving, and it wasn't really a big deal, like we were out there daytime, no problem, taking our time. Like it wasn't like we were like, like afraid of getting in trouble or anything. It's like, yeah, we're just cool. Putting up artwork, not hurting anybody. Yeah.
That's awesome. When did the name Cryptik come into play? Was it from the start? Did you have that name from the beginning?
You know what? That's actually like something that came out of art school. It was like just a project. I had to develop this kind of this system, branding and all this stuff. And, back then I was really interested kind of into a lot of, esoteric things and, mysticism and Eastern philosophy and obviously language and typography, letter form, and as well as graffiti. So I just felt like all those things kind of like would be an interesting idea to explore as an idea. So that, I think eventually, years later, when I felt like, oh, maybe I need a name, an identity for this street art thing. That's kind of what came back. I felt like it was still appropriate.
Nice.
Because it tied into so many of the things that I was interested in,
Yeah. No, it's cool how that even as your work has evolved over your career, it's still, the name still is relevant and it still seems to fit. No matter how your style has evolved, it still seems to be appropriate.
I mean, I don't know. It's probably silly, you know what I mean? Like I see a lot of my friends using their actual like legal names now and their monikers as just kind of like a little nickname in between. But I don't know. I don't know if that would work for me, right?
I was going to ask you about that. Like, do you still see the value in it that you once saw? Because, for when you're early on and you're doing stuff, right. some of it's not legal, you kind of have the anonymity in order to protect yourself. But now that you're doing all these commercial, more legitimate above the board projects, do you still see the value in having that name?
Yeah, I guess that's something I'll have to like, figure out as time goes. But so far, I don't know. I do enjoy the anonymity in a sense.
Sure.
Just because I am a pretty private person. But yeah, maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe I do need to explore that a little bit.
No, I mean, I know you've spoken in the past about just wanting people to focus more on the art. than the person. And I think that reinforces that idea in a way,
Right on. Yeah. Who knows, right? Like, yeah, who knows where all this will go. But I guess I just don't take myself seriously enough to really, I guess, care at this point.
Right on. So how did you eventually transition out of that, the commercial, like the freelance work that you were doing, and what gave you that confidence to kind of give up that steady paycheck that came with that?
I was putting up a lot of artwork in the streets at the time, and I got an opportunity to paint the inside of a restaurant in Venice. So I, left. I took a 1 month hiatus from work. Told them I'd be back within a month. In between that time, I got another call from Nike saying, "Hey, we have this other project in downtown LA. We'd love to have you come by and do this." So I guess like things kind of just rolled into, another kind of just, one after another. And I didn't really have time to go back to work. So it's not like I was planning on leaving my full time. It just happened organically. I didn't take anything with me from work. All of my files are still on my computer. I left everything and just never went back. I guess I got lucky,
So you didn't turn in your 2-week notice and
no. But they were so cool. They were very supportive, cool. And they totally, understood. And
awesome. So I don't know how the timing lines up with this, because I know you put a book out in 2012. So just, a handful of years after you started really getting serious about it in 2008, it called Cryptik Eastern Philosophy. I think it was published by Zero Plus Publishing, 84 pages long, and it has a ton of your work in it. So how did that book project come about? Was that something that they approached you with, or did you have the idea for it?
No. I would never have that sort of idea, especially that early on in my career. And even, in retrospect, thinking back on it, I do feel like it could have been, it may have been a bit premature. But I was just so excited, and just at any kind of, opportunity, I guess, that came my way. But yeah, the publisher, he's a good friend of mine, Kurt Peterson. He approached me and said, he'd love to publish a book. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, man. Like, I had no idea at the time, I had so many photos and things like that. So yeah, I just kind of went with it. But my work has evolved so much since that time that it's like, maybe it's good that it's kind of like a little time capsule. It's something that I could always kind of have and, reflect back on. But yeah, I'm working on a new book right now, probably just going to self-publish this next one. But it'll be a bit more of kind of a wrap up of, the past 10 years or so of, the work that I've been doing.
No, that's awesome. And so with this new project, how involved are you in with, the layout of the book, the copy? Like, how much are you involved in the actual design of the book itself?
Oh, I mean, it's 100%, obviously, because we're planning on self-publishing this one. We're not going to, mass produce them or anything like that, but, just really thoughtful, design and, copy and stuff like that. So
very cool.
And I enjoy doing that as well. So,
oh, like the book design or book layout?
Yeah, just, design, layout and all that kind of stuff,
Plugs into the graphic design side.
Yeah, right.
So when can people expect, do you have an idea of when you're aiming to have that out?
Well, hopefully sometime in 2023.
Okay.
It's not something that I plan on releasing this year because I do have, this year's kind of full as far as offerings. But yeah, hopefully we could have something by springtime, summertime next year. It would align with obviously an event or something like that. But maybe at that time.
Awesome. Very cool. So you talked a little bit about the early style of your work and how it was more focused on, subjects like spiritual leaders, Gandhi. I know you did several times. So definitely different kind of aesthetic. I mean, I think the aesthetic is very, you can see the through line to what you make today, but it definitely has evolved from what you did early on. And so I guess, how did Eastern philosophy and spirituality in general become such a big focus for you, and especially in that early part of your career as you were getting started?
I think it's an easy entry point. I guess for most people that are interested in trying to understand the nature of the mind, the nature of reality. I think the Buddhists, many thousands of years ago have, kind of experimented and studied themselves, studied their own consciousness and their own mind, to the point where they were actually like scientists in a sense. So, I think just, knowing that, knowing those sort of things. And I think I was just kind of curious, intuitively. I think that it felt like, something that aligned, with me. So, it was really just I guess my entry into the realm of, philosophy and spirituality. And so that, with the art, it was just a reflection of that. Whenever I would learn something or get into a new philosophy, it'd be like, oh, let me share that through a visual, right?
And it is very much a mixture of a lot of different ideologies, I guess. Is that because you were yourself studying a lot of different ideologies just to try to take an inventory of them, or?
Yeah, I never, I grew up Catholic, not necessarily by choice, but that's just what my family, it was like the first church we found, and they were Catholic. So it's what we were, right? But, I think like in junior high, you start questioning things. So, I've always kind of just had that rebellious spirit too. So, I just, really started, trying to understand things, on my own, in a way that made, I guess, sense to me.
No, it's interesting. 'Cause, I mean, it's, this was a lot of, it sounds like it was born out of a lot of personal discovery for you. And I think it's one thing to kind of be spiritual and do that self-discovery. But you actually made that the subject of your artwork, which I think is like another level of commitment, that's beyond just personal discovery. Like, you turned that outward and made that your own artistic expression. So I guess what was it about what you were learning that you wanted to effectively share with the world,
I think there's so much, right? But, I think I was, just so excited about, learning, these new, ways of thinking. And it's not like I wanted to impose any specific idea or anything like that. But it was just more putting that energy out there, to let, I don't know, to create some sort of dialogue, because it is confusing if you see a Buddha, right? And then you see a Ganesha, and like, wait, is this guy Buddhist or is he Hindu? Right? Like, it's really confusing. But for me, I never really adhered to, like I said, to any philosophy or religious ideologies. I don't know. I always felt like every religion, every teaching, they were holding like a small piece to the grand mystery, the big puzzle, right? And so it's trying to grab all those little pieces and, put them together in my own mind that make, in a way that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I was, I guess, trying to do with the art as well, saying, hey, there's no one way, there's no ultimate truth. I think we all hold, I think there's something to be gained from a little bit of everything. So yeah, that's really what, I guess I was trying to do, because that's how I was learning,
Yeah. No, I really like that perspective. I kind of feel very similarly in that, setting aside people that try to force religion on other people, like I think we all know that that's not good, but each individual ideology or religion seems to have, I mean, they're all kind of built around this framework for how to live a good life. And if you approach it that way, if you think about it in those terms and you're not trying to impose it on other people and you're just taking it to internalize it and have it be a way to lead a good life, then great, it can be good things. And each one of these religions has different, like you said, different pieces that are unique to them that you can kind of learn from. And so I like the way that you articulated that. I think that was good.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely like the gem, right? That's the ultimate truth. And yeah, you really nailed it. That's really all I wanted to get out. Like, just let's just be good, good humans,
people.
Right?
Yeah. And so how did how did your style transition to more of what you're making today? Because there's definitely an evolution. Was that a very organic process, or was it more of a conscious effort to change your style?
Yeah, no, it was definitely more conscious. I never really like considered myself like a graphic, like illustrator, that type of person. Although I enjoyed, drawing, illustrating, rendering and all that. I was, definitely more interested in, calligraphy and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I think it was something I couldn't see myself doing the illustrative work, as like a career, as like a lifelong career. Like when I'm, 50, 60, could I, still imagine myself doing this kind of work? Like, is it going to be interesting? So yeah, I think, consciously, like I, made that decision to focus, more on my calligraphy, cause I felt like that was what came naturally to me.
Nice.
So yeah, that's really the direction I've been kind of going on since.
No, it's really cool. And I mean, that's one of the aspects of your work that I personally like the most. And I didn't realize before I started, and I followed you for a while, but I didn't know until I started researching for this interview that was actually a stylized version of English. I just assumed it was either symbols that you had created yourself just out of your own imagination, or they were a language that I didn't know myself. But it turns out it's actually English that is just extremely artistic, which I think speaks to the fact that, you brilliantly kind of made art out of the word forms, which I think is amazing. So I guess how did this stylized alphabet effectively come to be? And I guess what inspired that direction for you?
It probably goes back to my childhood again, looking, just seeing all the gang graffiti and cholo lettering. Because as a child looking at those letter forms, it was very, mysterious. I wanted to know more about it. Or I was just drawn to it. I think when you, even look at languages, that you don't necessarily, understand visually, there's something that's interesting, that's mysterious about it. So, I think from the time I graduated art school, I really started to explore language and the origins of language. Maybe because it tied back into graffiti and letter forms, and I wanted to understand why they looked the way they did. Why did these letters look this way? And why are there so many similarities between such distinct culture, I guess like writing systems, from Hebrew to Sanskrit to Arabic. Like, I wanted to kind of understand the connection between, these things and get to the root, what was the mother tongue? What was like the original language? Like, not to say that there was one, but in my mind, it's kind of just imagining, what did that look like? If language was something that was gifted down from the gods, what did that look like? And, maybe over time that, disseminated through different cultures and geographies and changed. And that's why they look different today. But maybe at one point they all, came from the source. So that was kind of the imagination, right? That was the thing I was just thinking about when creating these forms. But there's also that element of Old English and that cholo lettering kind of look, right? So it's kind of just a way to meld all those different ideas together.
And so for your use of letters and words within your work, how does that come into the piece? Like, do you plan the text out I guess which comes first, the idea for a piece or the text that's going to ultimately go into the piece? Like, does the text inspire the work, or do you come up with the text after you've already kind of formed the concept around the work?
Well, for the newer stuff that I'm doing, definitely the idea, the concept comes before the work, because, I have to use those letters to create this, this form. But I think with the, I guess the older work, maybe the mantradalas and stuff like that, I would have an idea and I would design it and stuff. And, so I guess, no, a lot of the stuff that I do is really thought out. It's not like I just kind of go for it. You know what I mean? And see what happens and then come up with a title. It's very, kind of like thought out, planned and designed before actually being executed.
Okay, interesting. And so you mentioned the mantradalas. I wanted to dive in a little bit because that's a very distinctive, kind of segment of your work or element of your work that you've done over the years. Yeah. I guess, does your attraction to the mandala motif in general, I guess, stem from that connection to Eastern philosophy? Like, was that bridging that gap between your old style and your new style?
Yeah, definitely. Just because, the mandala archetype it's prevalent all around the world. But especially like in places like India and Tibet and stuff like that. So, I guess, when it comes to, meditation and things like that, it's a big part of it. Mandala meditation and tankas in Tibet, like are devotional kind of, paintings that you meditate to. So it seemed like a natural, transition, from the stuff I was doing. Obviously it's very different. But yeah, luckily, people were able to, kind of follow me along this journey.
Yeah, for sure. And another, I think, distinctive aspect of your work is your use of colors. And while you definitely have different palettes that you'll go with, one of the most common ones that we see a lot is gold or silver on black. Like, that's one that you often will come back to. I guess, what goes into your choice of colors and what palette you ultimately use for a piece, and do those colors kind of represent something to you, or are part of maybe that larger story that you're trying to tell?
I think, with the newer stuff that I'm trying to do, I feel like I would like to create work that's a bit lighter, because that, a lot of that dark black background and, gold and stuff like that, it does feel a little bit, it's heavier. But I always felt like there was something, sacred to it. Like, when you see black and gold, it felt holy. So that's what I guess initially what I was, drawn to. If you look at like the cover of like the Quran, or the Holy Bible, it's always black and gold. So I don't know. I was always kind of like drawn to that. But I think in, more recent times, I've been seeking more color, maybe in my own life as well, right? Like, and that reflects in my work. So, I think it could be my lack of, like, I don't know, my palette is it's very earthy, muted, it's very quiet, it's probably not like the most like sophisticated. I don't know. Like, I don't feel like I have like the best sense of color. So like, the gold and black, the metallic, it's very easy for my mind to wrap my head around. But exploring these new colorways and gradients and stuff, have really kind of, opened my mind, and it's definitely more exciting,
Nice. No, that's awesome. And I guess combining all these things, the letter forms and your focus on calligraphy, the the Montradala work, as well as just your use of colors. What impact do you hope to have on people that view your work? Like, what are you hoping that they come away with? Or is that even an important thing for you? Or are you doing this just as your own expression? And
no, that's absolutely important. That's the only thing that's really important to me. But I hope it invokes a feeling, hopefully one that's similar to, the way that I feel when I'm painting. It's I feel like there's a transmission of energy when you're working, on a painting. I think you put that energy into that painting, and I don't know, maybe it's just my imagination or whatnot, but I almost feel like people can feel that, and, a lot of people say, oh, your work's so peaceful and stuff like that. And that makes me happy because that's how I want you to feel. I want you to feel peaceful, at ease. It's what I'm constantly seeking in my own life, right? And if I could share that in some way, man, what a gift. Like, I've always looked at art like, it's very selfish, like, what are you contributing to the world, really? How are you helping humanity? So yeah, I think that was a kind of, I don't know, the justification for me is if my work if it could help someone, then it's I guess valid, right? Or then it's worthwhile.
Yeah. And so to get, if it is this kind of transmission of energy and you're wanting to convey this peacefulness or this feeling of ease, do you have to be in a certain mindset in order to work? Like, what is your studio practice like so that you're in the right headspace?
I'll never, I'll never just go, and start painting. I have to really get myself in the right, mind space before starting, during. So there's kind of a lot of I guess preparation before going into a painting, a lot of like visualization and getting my mind ready to start the work. Because I don't know, it's all part of the process for me. Like, once the painting is finished, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind for me. It's more about the process that's most important, because like I said, like, I'm not like an expressive artist. Like, I wish I could be. I really envy that. I wish I can be a Jackson Pollock and just go nuts and splash paint around, right? But it's not me.
So what kind of like preliminary work goes into actually starting on a painting? Because as precise as a lot of these works are and how design focused they are, you think, they have to be a certain amount of meticulous planning in order for that to even work at all. So do you create like refined drawings? Like, after you've already kind of come up with the concept, how do you get to the point where you're ready to start on the painting?
Yeah, it all starts from sketch. I'll do line drawings of kind of the form, and I'll just do tens, I'll just keep doing them, different variations until I see a form that's kind of interesting. Then I'll do a little bit more refined sketch of that. And, I guess it's just this, it gets more refined as I continue that process. So, it's not like, once I start painting that's when, the process started. It really started, weeks, months in advance, with an idea. And once that idea, I feel like is ready for the canvas, then that's when I'll paint it. So yeah, the process could be anywhere from, 2-3 weeks sometime to really flesh out. Sometimes it's quicker. Sometimes, it just comes out like, there it is. But yeah, there's always a process of, design, sketching and design. And that's more my, I guess my design side. Like it's very like, meticulous lines, just have to be perfect, right? I wish I could break out of that. It's really mental. But it's something that also kind of like brings me some kind of like peace or something. I don't know. Maybe that order brings me some kind of peace.
I mean, that repetitive, like you said, you'll do the same drawing over and over again until you get it right. That sounds meditative in a way, Yeah,
it's like I always look at it kind of like it's like a puzzle. It has to like fit. Everything has to fit right. The balance, the form, just the vibration of whatever it is has to feel right. So I don't know. For each piece, I'm always looking for maybe something a little bit different, but it's always, it always comes down to that vibration. What is that vibration,
And so when do you bring color into it? So as you're doing these drawings and sketches, like how do you, or I guess at what point in that process does color enter into the picture and define your palette?
Sometimes it's before, sometimes it's after that, but I'll be inspired by, just random things, that I see. Maybe it's like a dress that someone's wearing. I'm like, wow, I really like the way that fades. Or, maybe it's like a postcard or something and, or packaging. And, I'll have this, rolling kind of a palette, in the back of my mind. But if I'm really excited about a certain colorway, then, the idea will obviously, come after that, I'll be, I think this mantra or this design would be great with that palette. But sometimes the design will come first, and then I have to think of, what would, the best colorway or whatever, be for this painting. So.
No, that's really cool. And I know that sometimes you'll use, and very often, especially for your studio work, metallic paints, or you'll have some kind of metallics within the paints. I guess what attracted you to that motif and having metallics be part of the paint that you use?
It really comes from, when I was silkscreen printing my own T-shirts. I would print a lot of gold on black just because it was so, vibrant. And, for prints, I would, kind of do the same thing and put them up because I felt like it was the most striking. So I took the that idea. It was kind of like this powder, this gold powder that you would mix into the water-based ink before you printed. So I always had this powder lying around, and I just decided to mix it, with some of my gold, acrylic. Added a little bit of water, and it's, I was like, I really like how that looks. But yeah, I think it was really just more the contrast of the ultra flat with, this like really, metallic-y kind of reflective, surface. So maybe that's what I was, interested in.
No, it's really cool. And several of the pieces that you've done over the years have been on layered panels, which I think adds a completely like fascinating dynamic to it. And so I guess at what point in your planning process and some of the processes you talked about earlier, do you determine what substrate you're going to work on? Because I know you worked with single panels, multi-level panels, canvas. What plays into that decision? And is it something that's driven by the piece and the concept, or just a desire to work on a particular medium at that point?
I think when I was doing or working on the Montradala series, they all started out as canvases. But in my mind, they were always very dimensional and moving and coming toward me. And I wanted to, I guess, try to recreate that feeling of movement and depth in a way that was, obviously I'll never be able to recreate things the way I see it in my mind. But, I guess it was it was like the closest, way, or it was like the next step from a flat canvas to kind of, show people that, there's supposed to be this movement, this idea of depth and travel. And they were like portals, like you're drawn into this thing. So that's what I was trying to convey, I guess, with all those layered pieces. And, those were all like hardwood panels. And that's really just, because I had no, other option. They had to be, really, sturdy and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it was a way of, I guess getting closer to what you're actually creating in your mind's eye.
Yeah. I mean, if it was exactly what I see, these things would be rotating and moving and coming at you and evolving and transforming. So what you're saying is like a moment in time of that, I guess. Yeah.
Are there like mediums that you've not had a chance to explore that you'd like to explore someday?
That's kind of what I've been doing recently. I've just been really inspired to just try different things, different techniques, work with different mediums. I've been sculpting a lot with wood. Most recently, I've been playing with clay. I started sculpting in clay, and that's been really fun. It's so rewarding because it's
nice.
It's so fast. I can get to what I want much quicker than if I were working with wood. So I've been just exploring. I've experimented with like cement and things like that, but that's something that I'll probably continue to experiment with until I find something that's like that makes sense. As far as time and whatever.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I guess for your mural works, there's like this whole other logistical element that, obviously isn't present in what you do in the studio. You're traveling a lot of times to other communities and other locations, and you have buildings that are different shapes and just kind of going into other people's communities is a sensitive thing just in and of itself. When you're working in another city on some of these projects, are you even able to get to know the communities that you're going into? Is that something that you try to do while you're there?
I think it's a little different if you're at a festival versus if you're on I've gone on several kind of cultural trips with powwow, and those are way more intimate, where we would spend weeks with a community or a village and really get to know the people and the culture and stuff like that. And that's really what I enjoyed. But even at festivals or just at a commissioned wall, I'm very always thrilled to talk to the locals and people that might be interested in or that are familiar with the work or not. But yeah, I love building with the community and that sort of thing. I think that's the big reward from getting to paint murals outdoors.
Yeah. And I guess how much does the unique, characteristics of a neighborhood that you're painting in, and, I guess the people of that neighborhood, how much does that feed into your concept and the ideas that you come up for that piece?
100%. I think the architecture itself, the culture, the area, all those things, will, kind of dictate the design, the direction, the copy, whatever it is that I'm putting up. I'm fully aware that I'm always a guest when I come into these communities. So, I would hate for my artwork to offend somebody or make someone feel a certain way, other than positive, right? So. I try to be very conscious and aware of that at all times, right?
Awesome. And I guess does your process for developing an idea for something that's ultimately going to go up on a wall, does it differ than the process that we talked about a little bit ago to your studio work?
It's probably a bit more challenging, but I think that's what makes it more interesting, because you're dealing with I guess, different spatial, dimensions. You're working with, height and these crazy sized buildings at times. So, but overall, yeah, the process is fairly similar. I think you have a bit more creative freedom, with some of the outdoor works, depending on, the architecture and the space. You could probably do something more clever and interesting versus just work on canvas.
Interesting in the sense that it plays off of that building, or
or the environment, or something. There's a correlation, to the space, whether it's just the colors or the idea, the imagery, whatever it is. It should feel like it belongs in that space versus like being very obtrusive. So.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because it does definitely kind of create a dialogue between, your art and the community, which I think is a very, intimate experience. So I guess between studio work and, which is, ultimately destined for galleries, and the work that you do in the streets, do you prefer one or the other? Does one have a bigger place in your heart?
Not necessarily. I think they're, they both kind of give me the balance that I think I need. When I'm in the studio for too long, it can get get a little crazy. I feel like I need to get out. Yeah. But when I'm traveling, it's also very demanding and tiring too. So it's, I can't wait to get back to the studio. And, there's good and bad, I guess, for both. But mostly good, I really enjoy the back and forth. It's a really great life balance for me.
Awesome. Very cool. So let's talk about what you have coming up. What's been your main focus for this year, and what does the rest of 2022 look like for you?
Well, this year I've been just kind of up until this point working towards some, working on some group shows, little things here and there, commissions, wrapping up some commissions. But right now, as any free time or spare moment that I have, I'm dedicating toward this new body of work that I'm developing. It's always like I said, it's a bit more sculptural, a bit more dimensional. So yeah, that's kind of the idea that I've been exploring. So hopefully within the next year or so, I could share that with you guys. But that's something, I guess the biggest thing I'm trying to work toward. It's been a long time since I've done anything in LA. So that's been kind of the goal with this newer body of work. So, I feel like, I would love to share it with, the people here.
Amazing. That's exciting. Yeah. And so that's, you're anticipating that's probably going to be sometime in the next year or so?
Yeah, probably 2023 sometime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you already have a gallery that you're partnering with on?
I don't know if it'll necessarily be a gallery. It might just be, more of a, pop-up type event, or who knows, maybe it is a gallery. I'm not exactly sure how I want to put it out there. But yeah, we'll see.
It's awesome.
Yeah, we'll see how it all comes together.
That's exciting. Yeah. I'm stoked. I guess anything else that you have going on that you'd want to put on people's radars, events, print releases, stuff like that?
I guess the biggest thing, or the most recent upcoming offering, is my first wall sculpture multiple. It's kind of part of the newer body of work that I'm working on. It was my first actual large scale wall sculpture, but the multiple will be it's like 2 feet wide. It's much smaller, scaled down version, but I'm stoked to finally get that stuff out there, and hopefully people be able to follow me on this next chapter. So
is that piece titled Shangri-La? Is that the
new
wall multiple?
This one is titled Satchidananda, the truth, consciousness, bliss. Yeah, it was kind of more of the kind of a landscape one. Yeah,
nice. And so where would people? I mean, I guess would they follow you to find out more about that whenever it's going to be available?
Yeah, I mean, on my Instagram, on website, I'll definitely put the word out there and give people a advance, heads up and all that. So
awesome, exciting, man. Well, I'm excited for all that you have coming up. That's really cool. So I guess last question, and this is something that I like to ask everybody: who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Have you had Chaz Bojorquez on?
No, I haven't.
He's really the godfather of like Chicano lettering in LA, and obviously been a big mentor and supporter of my work. So I would love to hear his thoughts and his history. Obviously, he has an incredible history coming up in LA and doing what he's doing, and I always look up to the people that came before me. So he's been a huge inspiration. Would love to hear what you guys talk about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Cryptik, thank you so much for doing the show, man. It's been really good to get to know more about you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure. Anytime.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Cryptik. I really love what he had to say about the impact that he wants to have on his viewers and how it is, the most important thing. It's interesting, several of the folks that I've talked to on previous episodes have mentioned how, they try not to get too caught up with how viewers of their work think about it or how they interpret a piece, to try not to let that influence what they make in the future. That just, getting these ideas out of their heads and having this outlet for expression is all that really matters to them. They're not as concerned about how people interpret that work. But for Cryptik, it was very clear that he cares a lot about how his work makes people feel, saying that it was literally the most important thing, that being able to evoke a sense of peace in someone is an enormous gift and almost a privilege. And he described it as this transfer of energy, this peaceful energy from him through his work to his patrons. And I thought that was really powerful. It sounds like he has an exciting year coming up. A brand new monograph more than 10 years since his original book, which, he did say was perhaps a bit premature, having only been, working for a couple years at that point. And considering that his art style hadn't, fully developed into the style of work that he makes today. So it'll be super interesting to see, this new book and how it contrasts with the one from 2012. It sounds like he's aiming to have it ready to release sometime next year, and he's doing all the publishing work himself. So from the ground up, it's going to be entirely him. Also targeted for next year is the release of a brand new body of work that he's already started working on. And it sounds like this new body of work is yet another evolution of his style, going in new directions in terms of, more varied color palettes, new materials that he hasn't used before, and completely new formats like these wall sculptures. Oh, and he's even got a limited edition run of a wall sculpture multiple coming out later this year as well. So for all these exciting new offerings, be sure to follow Cryptik's Instagram to stay up to date with the latest. So thanks again to Cryptik for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you can help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other. Also, abortion is healthcare and healthcare is a human right.